Welcome back. I want to continue talking and giving you some examples of formative assessment of learning. So this is one of the ones included in this book, and it's also one of the ones that described in your PDF handout, called concept map. One I really like, and my students really enjoy doing this as well. Before we get onto that though, let me remind you of some things we've talked about before. The idea that as students walk into our course, our module, our classroom, they're novices. And so they take individual bits of knowledge, and they might be able to relate a little bit how those fit together. They might be able to put together a string of them, but they're not at all experts, so they do not necessarily understand all the hierarchy of how things fit together. And certainly, again, we are experts. We understand the connections and the differences between all the bits of knowledge and how they interact with each other and how they relate to each other. So part of what we really want them to do, and part of that critical thinking component, is how do we get them to start thinking in this way, not simply that these are discrete bits of information and have this has nothing to do with this over here. We use a concept map. This is a concept map of a concept map. Literally, a visual representation. Central theme here is concept map. It doesn't have to be here. You could put that anywhere. What is it? It's a graphic outline, it's a visual representation, keywords are prominent, linking of categories and connections. So you can see the linking here, the line linking these things. So that's what it is. It's a graphical outline of visual representation. How would I put these different words together, these different concepts together on a piece of paper so that it makes sense to me? We use them for lots of different things: planning essays, organizing ideas, note-taking, presentations, all sorts of things that you can use these for. I use them as a formative learning assessment. How do you create them? You select a topic. Assuming the student was doing this on their own, they would be researching or reading, whatever, the brainstorming, and then linking relationships and concepts. I usually give them the words. So then they have to organize those words themselves. They don't necessarily go out and do independent research or reading beyond what I give them. Advantages, very easily learned. Non-linear, and this is very important. Let me go back here one slide if I might. Again, this starts to get them away from this idea that everything is linear, that this is related to that, it's related to that, or it's not related to that. It starts to get them closer to either some hierarchical approach to it, putting these different concepts and words together, or understanding connections. So again, it's non-linear. Visually organized. You can see it. Recall that vision is our major sense. Relationships become clear and presents a complete picture of whatever the broad stroke of what you're teaching them. So I'm going to give you some specific kinds of examples. This is a concept map of a concept map. And it's not important to read all the details here. What's important is to recognize that words or concepts are embedded in the blocks in blue. They're connecting lines, in this case arrows, connecting these. And you can see there's connecting arrows going all over the place. And in this case, they've also put in some words. So organized knowledge is content dependent. And you can do that, either just straight arrows, connecting lines, add some words like that. It's entirely up to you how you expect your students to do it. Another example, this is about leadership. Leadership is at the top up here. Leadership consists of style found within theory. You can follow those arrows on down and you can start to see the interrelationships of all these different components. Building relationships, learn skill, communication, and so on, how it all fits together. This concept map is a concept map. Obviously, there's way too much information here. I will point out that they are using different colors to represent different things, and sometimes different shapes of the blocks or where the words are that they're connecting. Again, they're using arrows here, but this is way too much information. So we want something a little bit easier to deal with. Couple of examples from my course. It's not relevant that you can see the words. I understand you cannot see the words. The key is these are from two different groups given the same set of words. What I do is I give them a list of words, they cut those out, They put them on a large piece of paper and they tape them down. They can organize them any way they want. So there's group 1 and group 2. And clearly they organize them in a different way. And if we looked at this in detail, we realized that there's some commonality of how they link them together, but there are also differences. You can see the lines in this one, they're blue, this one they're more in pencil color, and they're using arrows, they're grouping things together. There's no wrong answer. Maybe some responses are better than others. Students really like doing this because it allows them to make decisions on how they're going to organize that information. And again, in my case, in my classroom, they're working in groups, and so they're sharing ideas, they're discussing. You can stand there and listen to them saying, well, where does this word, does the word go here, does it go over there, what does it connect to? And they're thinking through all these things as they're doing this. And again, they really enjoy this. The question would be, at what level of Bloom's taxonomy would they be working with a concept map? They have to remember the words. They have to understand the words. They're analyzing. They're making decisions, evaluating where to put the words, and they're creating a concept map. They're actually working at essentially all levels of Bloom's taxonomy at one time and putting one of these together. So this one's a fairly high level, working in terms of Bloom's taxonomy, it's a fairly high level classroom technique. And starts again to get them moving down to this level of where they're starting to see some connections that maybe they did not pick up on if they're simply reading chapter 1 and chapter 2 and lecture 3 and lecture 4, etc. Now, I have an assignment for you, and in your packet you have a bunch of words, and I want you to make a concept map. Print out the table of words or write them out, whatever works. Cut out the words with a pair of scissors. Place the words preferably on a large piece of paper, but whatever you have, whatever surface you have. Collaborate with your colleagues. Share ideas. All these words relate to the things we've been talking about or will be talking about in these videos. Arrange them any way that's most meaningful to you. So maybe you find a cluster of words that relate to Bloom's taxonomy. Well, those go together. But then how does that relate to assessments? How does that relate to learning objectives and so on? How are you going to put all that together so it makes sense to you? Consider different arrangements for the words. You may find, well, this word relates to that, but it also relates to that. Well, how are you going to arrange those? It's entirely up to you. Add connecting lines, arrows, use verbs, as I indicated, to define those relationships. There is no right way, and there's no best way. It's whatever visually makes sense to you. What is the most meaningful arrangement of those words for you or your group? These are the words, and again, you should have this in your packet, and I'm not going to take time to go through this, but do it, enjoy it, and think about how do you apply that idea to your own module and your own teaching.